health and safety are really products of the interactions of the elements of the system. And if you don't understand the system, you don't understand to manage it, then how can you be efficient at it? A lot of organizations will try to go down the hop path, in my opinion, without having a clear understanding of the system. And to me, it becomes very inefficient. When you put the two together, it's like hop on steroids, if you ask me. The transformation process is much quicker, much smoother, much more of a learning environment. Concept of a system, in my opinion, is really over verbalized or verbally abused, if I can say that. For example, when we say resilience engineering, or we say organizational resilience, resilience really has a definition. It's the ability of the system to function prior to, during, or following changes or disturbances so that operations can be sustained under both expected and unexpected conditions. The part that really kind of sticks out to me like a sore thumb there is that a system, the ability of the system, oftentimes we agree that organizational resiliency is a necessary component. We all want to strive and achieve organizational resilience within our organization. It's really a high level goal, but oftentimes we don't take the time to define the system. It's really hard to manage something that we can't define. What is a system? If you're not familiar with a system, you're sitting in one right now. The human body is a system. The car that you drive to work is a system. Think about it. There are a lot of elements within a system. There's a circulatory element, there's a skeletal element, there's a muscular element. And when one of those elements isn't functioning very well, then the system just doesn't work very well. Same thing with your car, same thing with a football team. Would you put 11 quarterbacks on a field and expect success out of that team? Probably not. You're probably not going to be very successful. And that's really what we're talking about here. I think one of the large mistakes, or one of the big mistakes organizations make, is a lot of times they don't think about the system and how it interacts well with the transformational process to another philosophy such as HOP. Into what a system really looks like. Like I said a few minutes ago, everyone has a system, whether you know it or not. It's either reactive, which would be a picture on the left, or a proactive, which would be the Z10 example of a system on the right. The reactive piece is really what we're kind of trying to convince people of. Remember the statement I made a minute ago, a system whispers before it screams. Well, if it's reactive, if you are managing a reactive system, in other words, you're playing whack-a-mole, you're out there putting fires out as they occur, everybody typically has the same elements within the system. There's a leadership element, there's a training element, there's an investigation element, there's a planning element, et cetera, et cetera. You're putting those fires out when they occur. You're only hearing the screams. But a well-managed system, really, with a really good understanding, is really the elements of the system are interdependent on every other element of that system for the success of the system. We're not trying to, in a proactive sense, we're not trying to develop an elemental success. We are trying to develop systematic success, and that's really what we're after. When you think about safety one and you think about a reactive approach to system thinking, it's really all about the who. If I could simplify, and I know books were written about safety one to safety two, but if I could simplify it, it would be all about the who. Who failed the system? Who is to blame? Who broke the rules? Who needs to be fixed? That's really where, in a linear sense, things don't work very well. Problems are often evaluated in isolation. Learning often occurs from failure. Feedback loops are not defined. Data, it does not exist to establish those loops. And safety is really the absence of injuries. We've all talked about zero. What do we learn from zero? It's really zero. But on the proactive side, it's really about the what. So safety two is really about the what. What within this system failed the operator? What can be made better? What can be made more air tolerant? What do people need to be successful? Sound familiar? That's really human and organizational performance in a nutshell. It's really supported extremely well because the system is dynamic. The system is not the sum of its pieces, but it's a product of the interaction. We learn from failures and successes together. We communicate extremely well because channels are open. It flows top down, bottom up across the organization. Some of you probably remember the DOE study that came out years ago that kind of focused on where does, how do unwanted outcomes occur? There's something to that effect. And there was a big pie chart, and the pie chart said 80% was human error and 20% was mechanical or equipment failures. And then they took the human error part and they um, subjected it, took it away from it. And it's like, okay, where does the human error come from? And 70% of it was latent organizational weaknesses and 30% was the individual. And I've seen other studies too that have it as 90% latent organizational weaknesses and 10% individual. The case in point here is most human error um, comes from conditions. Really, latent people don't understand latent organizational weaknesses when you talk about it in the field, but they do understand conditions. They understand the what. What is having an impact on human error that created that unwanted outcome? So what can you do to actually improve your organization at a micro level? You can focus on the conditions, not so much on the person or the individual, but you can focus on the what. Is what does this good look like? A lot of times, and I'm guilty of this as much as anybody else in the world, I used to think, behavior-based philosophy was the next coming, so to speak. Everything can be perfect. If you just try hard enough, everything can be perfect. We know now that that's not the case. Human beings just can't be perfect. You can't expect perfection. But what we can do is we can define what good looks like. Any decisions that we make out in the field, or even from a corporate standpoint, if we're measuring it against the 5 principles, error is normal, blame fixes nothing, learning. If we're measuring our responses to whatever question or problem is before us with the 5 principles, we can do some good. It's about figuring out what good looks like. You don't have to figure out what perfect looks like. I think we should start with what good looks like, and people understand that.